Well, hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're making a Halloween ukulele holder. Well, it's that time of year again, and Halloween is fast approaching. So I thought that on this week's show, we would make a spooky Halloween ukulele holder that you can mount on your wall. The whole project starts off with some wall plaques. And you know what? Let's head over to the bench and I'll show you what I've got. Well, our ukulele is going to be held by skeleton hands, and each one of the hands will get mounted on a wall plaque. So what I've done is I've gone on my computer and I have created this outline or this pattern for a wall plaque or a wall shield. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this scrap of 1/4-inch hardboard. It has all kinds of holes in it, but it doesn't matter. I just need the perimeter. I'm going to use spray adhesive. I'm going to attach this pattern to our scrap of hardboard. We're going to cut it out at the scroll saw and then fine tune it over at the belt sander, and that will give us a template for our shields. So now with our template done, we need the stock for our plaque. And what I have is some poplar. This is 1 1/8 inches thick. I've cut it to be 5 inches wide and 6.5 inches long. And that will nicely fit our plaques when we mark it out, and I'll be able to cut them from there. So we need a way to hang this. So what I have done is on the end, I have marked in from each edge at 1 1/4 inches, and I've placed a line 3/8 of an inch up from the bottom surface. And from here, we can head over to the router table. Well, over here at the router table, I have a keyhole bit installed in our router table. If you don't know what a keyhole bit is, it looks like this, and it routes mounting keyholes. So guys, I have this set up. That 3/8 of an inch above the bottom here, that is to get the height of our bit. This is a plunge bit. So what we need to do is we need to set it against our stops. I have our stops set here, and we will plunge down into the bit and then run it along till we get to the opposite side. And what that will do is it will create a keyhole from this section right here about 2 inches down or 2.5 inches down, and it will route up for about 1.5 inches, leaving an inch at the top. So you have to remember though that your plunging has to be on the bottom of your plaque, because that's where your keyhole goes, and then your screw will go into that hole and then it will slide along the slot. So let me get one of these routed and I will show you what it is that it should look like. And there is the one side done, and we can see that this screw will go into the hole. The head of the screw slides in here, and then it'll slide up to the top, but it cannot come out. So this will securely mount it. I want one in each side to keep it from tilting on the wall. So I will readjust my fence here and route the second keyhole. Okay, well, here's the problem. I have routed these accidentally so that one is slightly higher than the other. And that is going to cause a problem when mounting, because although it's only out by maybe 3/16 of an inch, this one plaque and the other one as well, because I routed them with the same setup, is going to be mounted slightly crooked. So I'm going to show you how to fix that. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my bevel and I'm going to line it up with the top of each hole, just like this. All right, so now we have that angle now that is from the top to the top of each one of the keyholes. We now need to transfer this to the other side. So you see what I just did there? I didn't turn anything over, I just did this. And now we're going to turn this around just like this, and we're going to very carefully place this mark right across our board. So now that line is crooked, but what we're going to do is when we trace out our template, Well, it looks like I have to come down just a little bit. So when I trace out my template, I'm going to trace it crooked on this board. And by tracing it crooked, I will be straightening it. I know it sounds so backwards, but I will be straightening it on our board to make sure that these keyholes now will be in the right position and will be square across the board. So I'm going to get both of my patterns traced on here. We're going to head over to the scroll saw and we're going to cut them out. And we're going to do that in the exact same fashion that we did our template. Okay, and with those shaped, we can move on. Now guys, alternatively, if you don't have a scroll saw, you can use a bandsaw. It's a much quicker cut, but I just want to show you here, if we put a square across our plaque, we now have our holes even with the side of the plaque, or at 90 degrees to them. So when this plaque gets mounted now, it will hang properly, even though we accidentally routed them incorrectly. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is I want to put a 1/4 inch round over all the way around the front edge. Actually, I'm thinking more maybe 1/8 of an inch. But guys, this is a perfect instance where you need to use a starter pin over at the router table. Any kind of misshapen item where you cannot use the fence, which is the safest way to do it, even with a bearing guided bit, we will use a starter pin. So I'm going to put a 1/8 inch round over all the way around the front edge of each of these, and then we'll give it a good sanding. Well, I know the area of the wall that I want to mount this ukulele in, so I've marked it with tape on either side so that I can see the exact area. And I've also placed my plaques where I want them to be. I've also used the ukulele itself and laid it out over top of this, and then sat my skeleton hands, which I got just from a local dollar store, over top, kind of like this, so that I can mimic where it is and how it's going to hold the ukulele. So what I've done is I've messed around and made this little marking template, and we can see here that our hands fit inside of those holes. And all I'm going to do is, now that I have the marks here for the angle that I want my hands on, I am going to place those marks from my template onto my plaque. And I'll show you what we're going to do with that next. Well, at this point I have my trim router set up with that same keyhole bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to plunge it into each of these holes and trim it out. Why a keyhole bit? Because that keyhole bit creates a ridge around the bottom edge. And what I want to do is, these skeletal hands are going to be mounted with epoxy, but I don't want the hands to be able to pull out like a plug coming out of the wood. So by placing that extra groove around the bottom edge, that's going to give a foundation for it to seat in here and not be able to pull out, which will go a long way to protecting the ukulele from falling, because the hands will not be able to be pulled out from the wood. Okay, and that should seat right here. Now we're going to have to cut off this one bone that is longer, but that will seat right in there. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other plaque, and from there I guess we can mix up some 2-part epoxy to fill in these holes and get our skeleton hands mounted here in the plaques. Okay, so truth be told, what I have done, I can't show you here because I've jammed it in there, but I have drilled a hole through one of the bones and then placed some thin wire through it and jammed it down in the hole, and that will, as well as preventing the epoxy from coming out by using that keyhole bit, I will prevent the skeleton hands from pulling out of the epoxy by having the wire adhere in that epoxy, kind of like concrete reinforcements when you put in reinforcing rod. So I'm going to mix up this epoxy, and I'm going to use a syringe to inject it into the holes and we will set these in place, and then it's a waiting game while we wait for this to dry. Okay, and some creative clamping to hold them in place, and now we're at a standstill until this epoxy dries. I did spill some out onto the plaques. I'm not concerned about that. I'll be able to trim it afterwards with a sharp chisel and get it cleaned up. And on top of that, these plaques are going to end up being painted anyway, so we're not too concerned about that for now. All right, so we can just leave this to dry, and I guess I'll see you when that's cured. Okay, so our hands are dry, the resin is dry. We can now position them in our taped off area where we want them to make sure that everything's going to fit where we want it. And what I've got is a little bit of double-sided tape on the back end of each one of these hangers. So we're going to position them where we need them and double-side tape them to the bench itself. Well, the double-sided tape wasn't holding us securely as I would like, so I've added some bench clamps to hold it in place. I've also used some scrap stock to raise the ukulele up to a point where I can form these hands around this. I also have a cloth over top of the ukulele to protect it. As this is mahogany, we don't want to damage it with hot plastic, which brings me to how we're going to shape this. Now guys, what we need to do is, using a heat gun, we're going to heat these hands, and then one by one we're going to shape them around the body of the ukulele to make sure that they hold the ukulele as firmly and securely as possible. I will caution you, make sure that you're wearing gloves when you're shaping these hands. This plastic does get hot and it does become very pliable very quickly. It's almost like someone flicks a switch and it goes from being rigid to being rubbery in a blink of an eye. So be very aware of what the condition of the plastic is while you're heating it. I would also caution that you may want to crack a window just in case any fumes come off the plastic. You want to have it in a well-vented area. All right, and with that, we have one hand shaped. Guys, it's a slow process, so just take your time and try not to deform the hands too much as you're shaping them. You don't want to damage the ukulele either, so make sure you do have a cloth over it. Now we have some areas here that got a little scorched from the heat gun. I wasn't moving the heat gun fast enough. That's okay. We're going to take a little scrap of 220 grit sandpaper and we can just rough up those areas and take those scorch marks out of it and clean it up a little bit. Okay, so with this hand for the body done over here, we're now going to turn our attention to this side, and I'm going to do the hand for the neck of the ukulele. I don't think we need another video of me heating a plastic hand and melting it, so I'm going to get it done and show you what it looks like when we're finished. Okay, and with that shaping done, we can see how the ukulele will sit here in the holder up on the wall. Now, here's the thing. These are custom bent now according to the positions of these two hangers. So before you go any further and take these away, you want to take measurements as to their distance apart from left to right and to their difference in height, because you're going to need those measurements when you go to mount this on your wall. If you want, you can even write them on the back of the hangers, and that way if you ever relocate them, you will know exactly where they need to be mounted. So let's move on to the next step, and the next step is going to be adding some color to these plain poplar bases. I have both of my bases ready to go. I have masked off our hands so that I don't get any spray paint on them, because I'm going to be spray painting our bases here, or our wall plaques, flat black. I think that will be the best option here for me. So I'm going to take these outside, give them a coating of flat black spray paint, and then after that, all that's really left to do here is mount them and hang our ukulele. And there you have it, a Halloween themed ukulele holder. And guys, this project is very adaptable to other instruments or other things that you may want to hang on the wall. It doesn't have to be for an instrument, or in this case, for a ukulele. But I will point out that even though we custom bent these fingers for this particular ukulele, this is a tenor sized ukulele. So this holder should potentially fit almost every tenor ukulele that's out there, because unless there's something custom or a very odd shape to it, a tenor ukulele in most cases is pretty much a general size, so they should fit. Guys, this project costs next to nothing to make. I got the skeletal hands at the dollar store, some scrap pieces of poplar that I had up in the rack, a little bit of resin and wire to seal them into the plaques, and that was really it. A little bit of spray paint. Done. Bob's your uncle. So this project really is not that difficult, and it's very, very inexpensive to make, which is a lot of fun. It's also a good one to get the kids involved with too, because there are some processes here that, while they may require some adult supervision, like cutting those plaques and that sort of thing, there's no reason that a young one, say ages 10 and up, could not do a project like this. I would just caution that that plastic of the hands does get very hot while melting it, so you want to be careful with that. Now guys, if you don't have a heat gun, you can use like a torch, like a propane torch, but you want to keep the flame far away. Use the heat, not the flame, to melt the plastic. Very important, because this stuff can give off toxic fumes if you burn it, so you don't want to do that. As well, you know, if you don't want to mount the plaques or mount on the plaques, you might have a different idea. Why not? Give it a try. Switch it up. Do what you want to do. The one thing that I will point out as well, that we routed those keyhole mountings in the back of these plaques, and we made sure that we did them both at the same time using the fence. That means that the distance between the screws that mount this in the wall for each one of our plaques or our hands is identical. So you don't have a lot of weird measurements to remember. And as long as you took the measurements from your bench as to where this mounts, the distance between them and the difference in height, if you wrote it on the back, as I said earlier in the video, that makes it so that transferring it to a different locations is a very easy process with very little headache and very little figuring out. All the measurements are right on the back for you. And if you should give it to somebody else, all the measurements as well are there for them, which makes it easier for them. Nothing worse than getting a gift and having it so frustrating that you don't know how to install it. So there you go. Either way, guys, a fun project, a quick one today, something that you can bang off in a weekend and have a lot of fun with. You know what? And honestly, it's not just for Halloween. If you like spooky things, this could be an all-year venture right here. And guys, I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. I hope you've enjoyed the project. If you haven't already, if you found any part of today's show likable, informative, fun, why not like and subscribe to the channel? We have an absolutely amazing audience base here, and I'm hoping that you're going to consider becoming a part of that. Guys, although the pattern is simple, if you are interested in the pattern for the plaques, whether you want to use it for this project or for something different, it will be available for free download off my website. Just visit acutabovewoodworkings.com, click on the free patterns section, and it's right there for the taking. Guys, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the project. I hope you're going to give this one a try for yourself. I hope that you're starting to get excited about Halloween and getting your stuff in line for that special night of October 31st. And more importantly, I hope you're going to join me again next week when I bring you yet another woodworking video.